Do you also cry from hunger? The question was so soft, Thomas almost thought it was the wind fussing through the dead grass. But when he turned, the voice belonged to a little girl standing at the fence line, like a wisp blown in from nowhere. Big eyes and a small, too thin face, hair a nest of brown tangles. He'd been rooted by his boy's grave for 3 hours, watching the sun lift and slide across the headstone. Michael Garrett, beloved child, 7 short years. 3 months since the fever took him. 3 months of whiskey breakfasts and nights that wouldn't end. 3 months of letting fences lean and roofs sag while he counted the ways he'd failed his boy. The girl's dress was mostly holes. Her bare feet looked split and bleeding from rock and road, and the October air had sharpened enough to bite. But it was her eyes that undid him, hollow the way his mirror had looked every morning since the burial. That awful emptiness of a person still breathing when everything worth breathing for was gone. "Sir?" she asked when he didn't answer. "Do you also cry from hunger?" His throat closed. That wasn't a metaphor, he realized with a jolt. Her belly was caved in beneath torn cloth, wrists thin as kindling. "When did you last eat?" His voice scraped from disuse. "Yesterday," she answered in that plain, impossible way children have. "Found some berries by the creek, but most were sour." He took in the rest. No shoes, no coat in late October. No bundle or kin in sight. "What's your name?" he asked, stepping, then halting when she flinched. "Rose," she whispered. "Rose Murphy. My pa left for the mines 2 months back. Said he'd be home before it got cold, but it's already got teeth." He didn't need her to finish. Another promise that didn't come back. Another kid left to survive on hope and scraps. Quick pause. If this story pulls you in, tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Back to it. "You hungry this minute?" Thomas asked. She nodded, then caught herself. "But I don't want charity, mister. I can work. I'm stronger than I look. I can sweep and fetch and tend animals, if you've still got any. I just—" She swallowed. Hope flickered where there'd been emptiness. It made his chest hurt. He glanced at his sagging house and lied without blinking. "Don't need any help," he said. The place needed everything. But he wouldn't make a starving child pay with labor for a meal. "I made too much stew yesterday. Going bad if somebody won't help me finish it." Another lie, but the gentle kind. She blinked. "You'd share?" There was such awe in her voice it shamed him. "Come on," he said, starting for the house. She trailed like a wild thing, ready to bolt. He found beans, a bit of salt pork, potatoes from the neglected garden. The kitchen wore a skin of dust. But flame and time could still make food. "You can sit," he said. "I'll stand," she murmured, pressed to the wall. "Don't want to dirty anything." He filled 2 bowls. She ate like someone drowning meets air. Careful at first, then with a steadiness that said she learned to make every bite last. He pretended to eat, watching her reclaim color. "Where have you been sleeping?" he asked after. "Different places," she said, bracing. "The old barn by Miller's Creek when it ain't too cold. Under bridges when it rains. I move around so folks don't get mad I'm staying." Storm clouds muscled up the ridge. "Big weather coming," he said. "You can't be outside tonight." Her fear flashed before the brave words. "I'll manage. I always do." He nodded toward the stairs. There's a spare room not doing anybody any good. No sense heating a whole house for one person when there's 2 of us here. Tears welled, quick and stubborn. "You let me stay?" "I won't be trouble. I'll leave in the morning. No rush, he said, startling himself. He put her in Michael's room without thinking. The room he couldn't bring himself to enter since lowering his boy into the ground. It felt right. Upstairs, a door clicked shut, then opened so she could call down. Thank you for the food. And the bed. Wind started up. Rain pattered, but inside there was a quiet he hadn't felt in months. His hand found the whiskey. For the first time since the funeral, he didn't need it. Maybe some hungers got fed only by feeding somebody else. Rose was gone by dawn, house hollow, like the heat had leaked through the walls. He found a note, careful letters on torn paper. Thank you for the food and bed. Don't want to be a burden. I'll remember your kindness. Rose. He cursed into his coffee and yanked on his boots. The storm had scrubbed the world, left it wet and cold. The kind of morning that stole breath. He checked the places she'd named. The barn by Miller's Creek, the creek bed, the tumbled shacks in the valley. Nothing. She'd vanished like mist off the cottonwoods. He saddled the gelding and rode every trail he knew. 10 miles of worry, circling back to that question. Do you also cry from hunger? Almost noon before he saw her. A small figure trudging the road to town with a bundle hugged to her chest. He nudged his horse into a trot. Rose spun, caught, guilty like she'd been stealing. Wildflowers, he realized when he dismounted. Ditch daisies and Queen Anne's fingered into fistfuls. Where you headed? He asked. Into town, she said, chin up. Gonna sell these a penny each. Maybe get enough for bread. The sight cracked something in him he'd thought was already dust. You don't have to do this, he said gently. You don't have to earn your right to exist. Her chin lifted higher. I'm not a beggar, Mr. Garrett. Pa said work for what you need, said charity makes folks soft. He wanted a word with her absent father, but settled for crouching to meet her eyes. She'd vanished like mist off the cottonwoods. He saddled the gelding and rode every trail he knew. 10 miles of worry, circling back to that question. Where you headed? He asked. Into town, she said. Drive to Mile with her. She nodded on without warning. She didn't have to sell these places. A lightful headed. She spit out the question. They get your beggar, doctor. They done for. She wanted a word with her absent father, but settled for crouching to meet her eyes. He wanted a word with her absent father, but settled for crouching to meet her eyes. He wanted a word with her absent father. Maybe your pa never went to sleep, wishing his stomach would quit chewing itself. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. Sometimes it's wise. She wavered. What if people think I'm lazy? What if they get mad I took without paying back? When you smiled yesterday, he asked. When you said thank you and made my empty house feel like a place somebody could live again? What do you call that? She frowned. I just said thank you. That mattered, he said. Some gifts are being human with other humans. She hugged her flowers closer. You really want me to come back? Even if I can't pay you or work much? He extended his hand. I want you to come home because the house is too quiet without you. Because not everything needs to be earned. Her fingers were small and cold in his palm. Okay, she whispered. But I'm keeping the flowers. Maybe we can put them in jars. He swung her up in front of him, on the saddle. The ride back smoothed out, her in front, questions spilling soft. What bird built that nest? Why some trees keep their leaves? Whether you could read weather in cloud shapes like old-timers claimed. It tugged at a memory, Michael's voice asking why frogs sing. Back at the ranch, he moved like a different man. They put the flowers in water. Mason jars lined along the windows, until the kitchen looked like it remembered how to smile. He cooked lunch that tasted like choosing to live. Then he fixed the crooked gate that had hung sad for months, reset leaning posts, cleared broken boards from the barn. Rose hauled nails and brought tools and talked. The work felt less like punishment, more like building for a tomorrow that might actually happen. As the sun dipped, she said, "Careful. Can I ask something personal?" He paused, hammer in hand. "Go ahead." Her eyes flicked to the little grave on the hill, then back. "You got your boy's marker here, but no wife's in the house. What happened?" The question punched the air out of him, but he answered plain. "My wife died when Michael was born. I raised him 7 years. Last spring fever took him. I couldn't stop it." Her face folded with sympathy. "That's the saddest thing I ever heard." Then she surprised him. She sat on the lumber pile beside him. "My ma died when I was 5. Pa said it was her lungs, but I think it was grief. She missed her people back east. After she died, Pa got quiet, like the sound left him. Maybe that's why he went to the mines. Maybe I looked too much like what he lost." He shook his head, firm. "Her death wasn't your fault, any more than Michael's was mine. Bad things happen and no reason comes with them. We still try to make good with what's left." She leaned against his shoulder, small and solid. "Do you think the ones we lost would want us to be happy again?" He thought of Michael's laugh, chasing fireflies. "I think they'd want us to love them, without letting the hurt be the only thing we feel." After supper, Rose asked if she could see Michael's room. His gut reaction was no. That room had been a shrine to silence. But the way she asked, hands folded, voice soft, eyes cautious, made him nod. "Second door on the right," he said quietly. "I haven't changed a thing." Her tread up the stairs was reverent, the way you enter a church. He stood in the kitchen, listening to the house remember another set of small footsteps. When she came back down, she was holding a carved pine horse, edges smooth, shiny, by little hands. "He must have loved this," she said, tracing the lines. "It's beautiful. Did you make it?" He nodded, throat tight. "For his 6th birthday. Took me near 3 weeks. He named it Thunder. Carried it everywhere for months." She held the horse like it was alive. "Would you teach me to carve? I want to make something that lasts. Something beautiful from plain wood." The question sent a little flare through him he hadn't felt in too long. Being useful. "I can show you the basics," he said. "Got scraps, an extra knife. It takes patience, and you'll get nicked." "I got time," she said, grinning. "Pa always said I was good at fixing what's broke." He heard the irony and didn't say it out loud. Maybe that's what they were. 2 busted things learning the knack of mending. That night, the house shifted. Not haunted, not a museum. It breathed. Wildflowers sweetened the kitchen. Her laughter scattered shadows in corners that had gathered like cobwebs. He fell asleep thinking about teaching a careful grip and the angle of a blade. 3 weeks later, the postman thumped at the door. Rose sat at the table, tongue out a little, the way Michael's used to do when he concentrated. Coaxing a bird from a strip of pine, while Thomas coached the curve of a wing. They'd found a rhythm, mornings with chores, afternoons with tools and stories, evenings with a book from the school teacher and a slow fire. The envelope the postman handed over wasn't like the usual farm broadsheets and bills. Official seal, territorial mining office in the corner. His blood chilled. Mining offices wrote for 2 reasons: claims or death. He took it outside to the porch, hands suddenly clumsy. He unfolded the paper. The words blurred, then sharpened. We regret to inform you that Jeremiah Murphy was killed in a mine collapse on October 15th. Body recovered and buried in Riverside Cemetery, outside Goldfield. Mr. Murphy listed your ranch as last known address and requested correspondence about his daughter, Rose, be sent to you. Please advise regarding custody. He read it 3 times, while Rose watched the road every evening, waiting for a dust plume that wouldn't come. Her father lay under hard ground, 200 miles away. How did a man cut hope cleanly, without leaving jagged edges? Mr. Garrett, Rose called through the window. I think I messed up the tail feathers. Can you come look? He slid the letter into his pocket and headed in, lungs tight. She held up the small bird. The tail canted a little crooked. Did I ruin it? Not ruined, he managed. Just distinctive. That curve makes it look like the bird swinging midair. Imperfect, can be interesting. She lit up, and his heart cracked at the trust in her, how she leaned toward his word like it was safe ground. He took a breath he didn't want to take. Rose, he said, pulling a chair beside hers. I need to tell you something about your pa. Her face brightened, like a lamp held to the dark. Did someone see him? Is he riding home? I knew he wouldn't forget. The hope in her voice was a knife. He's not coming back, Thomas said softly, taking her hands. There was an accident at the mine. And he couldn't say it. She stared at him, understanding anyway. He died, she whispered. Like your Michael. Like my ma. He nodded. She didn't wail. She didn't break things. She went very still, as if breathing wrong might shatter her. How long have you known? She asked at last, voice too calm for a child. The letter came this morning. I couldn't keep it from you. I won't lie to you. She swallowed and nodded, old beyond her years. Some grown folks would have tried to make up a story. I'm glad you didn't treat me like a baby. Then the question he dreaded edged in. What happens to me now? The territory had words for children with nobody left. Orphanage, if luck held. Workhouses, if it didn't. He saw her crammed into some institution, light extinguished by rules and straps. And bile burned his throat. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But you won't face it alone. She studied him with that weary, wise gaze. You don't have to take care of me, Mr. Garrett. You already did plenty. Bed, food, teaching me things. I ain't truly family. I'm just a stray wandered up your path. The word hit like a thrown stone. He steadied his voice. Look at me, Rose. She lifted her eyes. You are not a stray. You are not a burden. You're a brave, sharp, funny girl who made my life worth waking up to when I thought it would never be. This house has been better since you walked in. That cracked her composure. She launched into him, sobbing into his shirt. What if they take me away? What if someone says I gotta go? What if I never see you again? He held on. No one is taking you without going through me first, he said, meaning it, even if the law could be mean and blind. He saddled up an hour later and rode to town, leaving Rose with instructions. Don't open the door unless you know the face. The courthouse squatted near the main street, all dust and flat disappointment. The clerk was a thin man who looked surprised someone would ask to adopt an orphan on purpose. Most folks are trying to lose mouths, not gain 'em. He muttered, shuffling forms. You sure you want that trouble? Girls cost dear. Feeding and cloth and then marriage besides. Thomas kept his temper where it belonged. Unsure. Tell me what's required. The man outlined it. Papers filed with territorial government, character references from respectable men, business and church, proof he had money enough and morals besides, a home inspection from children's welfare, months of waiting, and not a promise at the end. He added like a man dropping a stone in a well to hear the echo. Judge Morrison handles most adoptions. He likes seeing applicants who understand how things get done around here. The implications stank of bribe. Thomas had savings salted away from years when grief hadn't corroded his will. He heard himself say quietly, "I understand. Whatever it takes." "Good," the clerk said, already scribbling. "Line up those references." He rode home with grit between his teeth and a plan knuckled tight in his chest. Rose waited on the porch with her bird. She held it up, careful. "I fixed the tail feather," she said, the pride in her voice a balm. "Your advice worked. Look how the tilt makes it look like it's turning in the wind." He examined it, throat burning with something good. The imperfection gave it life. "It's beautiful," he said honestly. Later, over stew that tasted of salt and smoke, he explained the road ahead. Petitions and signatures. Men of standing vouching. Strangers measuring their pantry and their souls. "What if they say no?" she asked. "What if Judge Morrison decides I ain't worth the trouble? Or you ain't fit to be my pa?" He reached across the table and took her small hand. "Then we figure another way. Move as we must. Or keep living like we are and let the law catch up when it's ready. One thing I'm sure of, you staying is not up for debate." She blinked, hope and fear wrestling in her eyes. Then blurted, "Would it be all right if I called you Pa? Not to forget my real pa. You've done more fathering in these weeks than I remember anyone doing." Mr. Garrett feels wrong now. He felt tears threaten and didn't bother hiding them. "I'd be honored," he said. "But only if you let me call you daughter. Not to replace Michael. Nothing could. But because you've made me remember how it feels to care for someone, and have that be a reason to keep going." Her smile could have lit the corners of his grief. "Yes, Pa," she said, trying out the word. The knot in his chest loosened a fraction. They were not safe yet. The territory could still pry them apart on a judge's whim. But he felt stronger, like his backbone remembered it used to hold him upright. The woman who came to examine their lives showed up like a cold snap that kills the last blues overnight. Mrs. Abernathy, from the Territorial Children's Welfare Office, climbed out of a black carriage, with her mouth drawn into a permanent no. She was all bone and starch, gray hair hauled back so tight it sharpened her angles. From the kitchen window, Thomas watched her inventory the yard with a squint, jotting in a leather journal like she was hunting violations. "Pa," Rose whispered, hovering by his elbow. "She looks mean. What if she says I can't stay?" He laid a hand on her shoulder. "We'll show her what a good home is," he said, steadying his own jitters with the sound. The knock hit the door like a gavel. "Mr. Garrett," she said when he opened it. "Mrs. Abernathy, Territorial Children's Welfare. I'm here to inspect your home regarding your petition to adopt the minor child, Rose Murphy." She stepped in without waiting. Her eyes swept the kitchen, the mason jars of wildflowers, the clean panes, the row of wooden birds on the sill, and registered nothing but data. "This is Rose," Thomas said, bringing the girl forward in her best dress, hair braided, face scrubbed raw. "Rose, greet Mrs. Abernathy." Rose curtsied the way Miss Patterson had taught her. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome." The social worker's gaze tracked Rose, like she was measuring a colt. "Child appears adequately nourished and clothed." she muttered, pen scratching. Basic cleanliness observed. She spoke about the girl as if she weren't 3 feet away. A specimen instead of a soul. Thomas tasted iron and kept his temper in his pocket. She's thriving here, he said, even. Learning to read better. Helps around the place. She's talented with her hands. This house is brighter with her in it. Mrs. Abernathy sniffed. I deal in facts, not feelings. Joy is not a criterion. She pivoted. We'll begin with sleeping arrangements. Her boots hammered the stairs like bad news. She prowled the room that had been Michael's, now tidy with Rose's careful touch. Neat bed, sunlight on the quilt, a shelf of cherished scraps. She pressed on the mattress, tugged at the curtains, scanned for danger, like kindness might hide behind the dresser. This room is large for one child, she observed, making a note. Perhaps excessively comfortable. Children from low circumstances may struggle with too much ease. It can foster idleness. Rose flushed, mortified but silent, like they'd practiced. Thomas's hands clenched. The audit went on for 2 long hours. Closets opened, floorboards tapped, pantry contents tallied. Their lives laid flat on paper by someone who didn't seem to believe people were shaped by more than rules. Tell me, Rose, Mrs. Abernathy asked, later in the parlor, pretending friendliness for the record. Do you ever feel unsafe with Mr. Garrett? She tilted her head. You can tell me. Rose's eyes flicked to Thomas, then back. No, ma'am, she said gently. He looks after me. He doesn't shout or strike. He talks to me how to do better. Mrs. Abernathy's pen stabbed a period. So no corporal punishment. That is concerning. Children need firm discipline. Thomas felt the hinge in him creak. He stood straighter. She responds to kindness and clear expectations. She wants to do right because she knows she's cared for. That's not manipulative, it's human. Mrs. Abernathy pursed her lips. Children should obey from duty and consequences. She clicked her journal closed. I've seen what I need. I'll file my report with Judge Morrison this week. You'll be informed. At the door she paused. One last thing, Mr. Garrett. What do you hope to gain by adopting an unrelated girl? Freedom has its advantages to a man in your position. It said everything about her that she couldn't imagine love as motive. A daughter, he said, simple and true. Someone to love and learn beside. Someone who makes waking up a good idea. If she found the answer unsatisfying, her face didn't soften. The carriage wheels groaned away. Rose waited until the dust settled, then said, with brutal clarity, she hated us before she met us. Why'd she take a job helping kids if she doesn't like kids? He drew her in, felt how small she still was, and how big her courage had to be. Some people get lost in rules and forget they were made for humans. We showed her our truth. That's all we can do. They ate in a hush that evening, both tasting futures they didn't want to swallow. The letter came 3 days later. Official envelope. The kind that had the power to rearrange lives. Thomas opened it, with Rose watching him, both hands on the table as if bracing. He read twice, before the words resolved into relief. Judge Morrison had reviewed Mrs. Abernathy's report, considered the references from men who'd known Thomas through good years and the bad ones, and approved the adoption. He looked up, blinked, and the smile found him. "You get to stay," he said, and the room felt bigger. "Forever." Judge Morrison signed it. "You're my daughter. Official. Rose Murphy Garrett." She whooped like sunlight and hurled herself into his arms. They laughed like something had cracked open and poured light they'd been starved for. Outside, October wind prowled for a hard winter. Inside, everything was warm and right. He thought of Mrs. Abernathy's chilly question. "What do you hope to gain?" "Everything that matters," he could have told her. Purpose. Joy. The chance to give a child a soft landing instead of a hard one. Proof that broken pieces can make a new whole. That night, they sat by the fire, her curled with a book, him whittling, without needing to distract himself from pain. The house felt more itself than it had in years. He set the knife down and watched his daughter turn pages, her lips moving gently over the words. "Do you also cry from hunger?" the memory whispered. He had cried from hunger, just not the kind that growls in your stomach. Some emptiness could only be fed by feeding. He had learned that too late for Michael, but not too late for this child. The adoption paper lay on the mantel, ink still shining. He knew trouble could still come. It always could. But tonight, he allowed himself something he hadn't tasted in a long time. Peace. Tomorrow there would be chores and a winter list, and all of that was beautiful. A quiet thought nudged him like an elbow. What would their lives look like in a year? In 3? The question didn't frighten him anymore. Spring showed early, like the world owed them gentleness. 3 years had unrolled since the black-lettered day on the mantel. Rose knelt in the vegetable patch behind the house, fingers dark with good soil, pressing bean seeds and patting earth like tucking in babies. 13 now, long legs and new poise. She didn't carry hunger in her face anymore. She carried belonging. "Pa, come look," she called, her voice bright as creek water. Thomas set down the fence post he'd been mending and walked over. She pointed to a green blade pushing up from yesterday's bed. "They're already sprouting," she said, delight ringing. "They're determined to grow." He loved that about her. After everything, she still marveled at ordinary miracles. He crouched. "Beans are eager things," he said. "They'll be climbing before you finish the poles." The ranch around them bore the shape of their hands. Fences straight, gates true, roofs tight, the herd in good flesh. The house had transformed as much as the land. It sounded like a place where people lived. Laughter, footsteps, the clatter of dishes, quiet for reading. On the windowsills, carved creatures kept watch, her delicate animals next to his rougher beginnings. The walls were dressed with her sketches and pressed flowers. And the hearth collected books Miss Patterson, the schoolteacher, had lent, then insisted she keep. It wasn't a monument to loss anymore. It was a home. Thomas watched her scrape dirt off her palms and stand, surveying their little kingdom like it might say thank you back. Pride warmed him, the kind that came from seeing something tender you'd cared for grow sturdy. She had become exactly the sort of young person he'd hoped she would be. Smart, capable, generous, steady enough to try hard things, and wise enough to ask for help when help would do more good than stubbornness. Pa, she said, tone shifting, face more careful. I need to tell you something I've been keeping in my pocket a while. Worry flicked his pulse. After years of choosing to trust mornings, he still found himself braced for a boot he couldn't see coming. Tell me, he said. You can bring anything to me. She took a breath. Miss Patterson helped me apply to the Teachers College in Denver. I got in. They offered a partial scholarship. I could start in the fall. The words hit like weather you saw on the horizon, but still surprised you when it reached your door. It made sense. Rose loved learning and had a gift for explaining. He'd been telling her for years she'd be good at teaching. Knowing and feeling landed differently in his chest, though. That's wonderful, he said, carefully honest. You'd make a fine teacher. Patient. Good at seeing the heart of the thing. She studied his face, like a page she'd learned to read. You're afraid I'll go and not come back, she said gently. Afraid you'll wake up to an empty house again, and the silence will eat you. He started to shake his head, but she raised a hand. You taught me to say the hard truths. Here's mine. Part of me is excited. Part of me is scared of leaving what makes me feel safe. Scared of being away from the only father who chose me and kept choosing me. Don't choose the next thing because of fear. Fear of going or fear of staying. Choose what fits who you're becoming. She nodded. That's why I need to tell the rest. I want to teach. But I want to teach here, in Copper Falls. Miss Patterson's retiring next year. She says the board would hire me if I had the papers. I can go to Denver, come back, and make this my life. Because I choose it, not because I don't know anything else. Relief rolled through him so strong, he had to plant his feet. She wanted to return. He also felt a tug of caution. He didn't want her dreams blunted by his need. Are you sure this is your dream, and not my wish? Not the safe road just because it's close? Her answer wore that bright, grounded certainty he'd watched grow. 3 years ago, I was a hungry kid who thought surviving was all there was. You gave me home and a name and the chance to figure out who I wanted to be. I know now. I want to be Rose Garrett, daughter of Thomas Garrett, teacher in Copper Falls. I want to help other children not be invisible. Evening found them on the porch, their usual spot for watching the sun step down behind the ranges. Her latest carving, a flower that seemed to bloom right out of the grain, rested in her lap. Her hands had outpaced his long ago. She saw the shape inside the wood before the knife touched it. Pa, she said, as crickets started fiddling in the grass. Do you remember that first night? The question I asked. What did you think I meant? He thought for a long breath. I thought you meant more than food, though food was part of it. I understood the kind of hunger that gnaws your soul, the empty that comes when purpose is gone. She nodded. I meant my belly then. But you heard the other kind. And somehow, when we helped each other with that, the bread and beans took care of themselves too. Funny how that works. They sat quiet, listening to the house tick, the world soften. He looked at her and saw all the beginnings still in her. He realized he owed her a truth. When you knocked on my door, he said, voice low, you saved me as much as I helped you. You gave me back a reason to wake up. That wasn't just getting through, You made me proud to be a father again. She set the carving aside and squeezed his hand. We rescued each other. That's what family is for. Catching, and then helping each other stand. Stars salted the dark. They didn't need to fill the silence. Tomorrow, she would write to the college, "Yes, I'm coming in the fall." And later, she would come home with a certificate and a head full of new ideas and unpack them in the same kitchen where wildflowers once revived a room. He thought about Michael under the cottonwood hill, the dirt grassing over clean. His boy would have adored this girl. Her curiosity, her stubborn kindness. Bringing Rose into the house had honored his son better than drowning in grief ever could. "I've got something for you," he said as they stood to go inside. "Been whittling on it nights." He pulled a small carved box from his pocket, flowers and birds dancing along its lid in tiny relief. She lifted it with both hands, like it might take off. Inside, 2 small wooden earrings shaped like roses lay bright against a scrap of blue cloth. "For when you graduate," he said, suddenly shy. "So wherever you go, you'll remember where you came from and where you belong." Her eyes filled quick as spring overflow. "They're perfect, Pa," she whispered. "The most beautiful things I've ever held." They stepped into the warm house. The boards creaked, the way old houses do when they're satisfied with who's walking their halls. He stood in the doorway, a beat, and let it wash over him, that this was his life now. Supper with his daughter. Plans about a future that wasn't a circle of sorrow. Good work in the morning. A warm bed at night. Simple gifts that landed like mercy. The question that began everything drifted through like a friendly ghost. "Do you also cry from hunger?" Yes, they had both cried. The starving kind and the kind you couldn't name because it lived where your reasons did. But not anymore, not like that. They hadn't filled every emptiness. No one ever does. But they'd found the one thing that makes emptiness bearable, a hand reaching back when you reach out. If you felt this story, tap like and subscribe for more like it. And tell us in the comments what moments hit you hardest or what you want to hear next.